Hi guys, Stu here with a new video, and this video is somewhat of a fun video, very subjective though. We are going to talk about the most fun specs in solo queue RPGs, because some people prefer to play fun specs instead of like competitive specs, and I'm going to talk about it. Of course, those are my tastes. It could be that it is a bit less tasteful for you guys, but maybe you can also kind of change your perspective on certain specs because of what I'm saying about those specs. Again, I'm a multi-classer. The only specs which I really don't play are the Evoker ones. The rest has been played by me, or I'm currently playing it, but the Evoker ones, like I said multiple times, I just don't like the aesthetic of Evoker. It can be the most fun spec out there. I cannot get over the fact that I'm a Dracter and I just don't like the aesthetic. I know there is T-Morph and such, but I don't want to like bother myself to actually download that, so it is what it is. Now, let's talk right away the criteria that I give to myself. I think it's very needed for the tier list. What is fun for me is being able to carry somewhat the games, where I'm not really that healer dependent, even if I don't have really any heals, although it's more ideal to have some heals behind you. But I want to be proficient at what I'm doing. I want to be able to do a 1v1 or 1v2. If I'm a healer, I want to be able to CC. I want to be able to heal. I want to be able to be somewhat very hard to kill, but also that I can turn myself into somewhat of a DPS where I can challenge some 1v1s if they really are on me and I don't have any way to run away, for example. So I like that. Also, tank-wise, again, I'm not a fan of tanking in RPGs. I like in other aspects of PvP, but in RPGs themselves, I feel like it's too heavy matchup, and generally you have to flag carry, and if you're not a Garden Druid or Vengeance Demon Hunter, it's actually very hard to do that. So for me, in general, tanks are not really the most desired specs, but as a whole, those are my criteria. Also, being able to be mobile, it's also very cool. Being able to give a lot of utility, a lot of like CC options is also very cool. So those are my criteria in general. So that being said, I think Affliction Warlock, which I'm going to start, is a very fun spec. Now I have to keep in mind, do I find it the most fun spec, or do I find it fun? It's very hard to give like a criteria to that. What do I like about Affliction is that you are actually a very strong caster in PGs in general. You are very hard to kill 1v1. I think you cannot really die in 1v1 generally, if you're like very smart with your portals, TPs, and you have the time to not get kicked on Shadow Skull, so you have like all your dots on everyone or like on that guy. Generally, you win the 1v1. Of course, there are like some matches where you're going to suffer probably, but in general, you're going to do very well. And there is also a lot of 1v2 potential. You can spam fear, you can fear and then cap, for example. I think the carry potential is very high. I already made a Soloq Rbg tier list video purely about power, so if you want to check that out, you can also check that out as well. But fun-wise, I think it's a very fun spec to play in RPGs. I think in general, range specs are very fun, except a few ones, I guess. But I think Affliction Warlock, you can really carry the game to the certain extent where you're like top damage, a lot of healing, and you have a portal, you have also your health stones, which are very useful for your team. I think in general it has the biggest package out there. I think Warlock in general has a big package, so I'm going to also say Destruction Warlock right away is also one of the most fun specs to play, because you have a lot of those damage patterns that are giving you some one-shot feels. Personally, on the PTR, I already crit for 250k, I think, on Chaos Bolts, and you know how Chaos Bolts are. They're they are never coming alone. Basically, they're often with 2 or 3 Chaos Bolts in the face, and often not that can score a kill. And you have multiple school of spells, and I think personally I have more fun as Destruction, but I think Affliction Warlock for me is also a very fun spec, so I do think they are both equal in the most fun category. But in general, you're going to have a lot of carry potential, a lot of impact in the games that you're playing as a Destruction Warlock, which you cannot say for every single spec out there, right? For example, Arcane Mage personally, I don't really find that fun. I think it's quite okay or meh. I never really liked Arcane Mages since they reworked it back in the day. I personally prefer the Wrath of the Lich King or Cataclysm style of Arcane Mages. I know it's like very surface level, like I don't think skill wise, but I mean like skill wise, like the spells that you have are very limited, and now they have way more spells. But I feel like at the end of the day, it comes to the same place really. And you have, of course, a lot of slipperiness. You have a lot of mobility. You can sheep, but sheeps can be broken. You have also Ice Wall as a PvP talent, which is very strong on certain maps. I'm going to put it at okay because I think I can have a lot of fun as Arcane Mage. It just is that I'm comparing it with other specs from mages where I have more fun. I do feel like as Arcane you can carry somewhat the games, but I think it's not like a Destruction Warlock where you can basically like be a one-man army. As Arcane Mage you're going to be very slippery, but a one-man army you're not really. It's not really the case, right? Let's talk about Arms Warrior. So I'm a warrior main. You guys know that. In general, if I don't have like a heal bot behind me, pretty much like a friend that is healing me, and I know that I'm not going to die from anything, then it's very fun because you're like a bulldozer and you're a juggernaut and you're unstoppable pretty much. But whenever you're playing solo QRBGs, you cannot really expect a healer to stay with you, or you cannot expect to have the heals that you need to actually like do the damage you have to do to win games. And that's why I said also in the solo QRBG tier list, like the power one, where I feel like it's not really that strong because it doesn't really have the carry potential, and that's something that is very like needed for BGs in general. For me at least, I don't find it very fun to be dependent of other people, and I think Arms Warrior can be fun just by themselves. Like the gameplay is very fun. I think the potential of what an Arms Warrior can bring to the table is very fun, but I don't think you can have like all the games being like very fun. Like for example, if I play Warlock and I do a solo QRBG, for example, on the PTR, I know I'm going to have a great time. But if I'm playing Arms Warrior, I cannot really pinpoint whenever I'm going to have fun right away. I first and foremost look at the comp, I see who I'm facing, and then I'm saying to myself, look, I'm playing versus 4 Warlocks, what the hell can I do? I'm going to get blasted. While as a Warlock you have way more tools to actually deal with that. So I'm going to say that it is okay because I'm a warrior main. If I wasn't a warrior main, I think it would be not fun. The reasoning is, again, you're not really mobile. You are mobile like with charges, but you're not mobile like if you have to run away, you have only one leap, for example. You have to intervene on someone, and if they get cleaved, you get cleaved as well. So it's not really ideal as well. You have a lot of utility though, that's very fun. Being a frontliner, if you have great heals, is also feeling very fun as well. But that's really dependency about the heals that you have behind you. And people are going to say, like on the Soloq RBGs again, they said like, Arms Warrior is actually very strong. What the hell are you on? In team RBGs, they're like wrecking. You need a frontliner. Look, it's team RBGs. I'm 100% with you. Team RBGs, like normal RBGs where you're finding 10 people to play with, like 9 people to play with you, and you try to win the games versus other pre-mates. Arms Warrior is very valuable and very strong. But in solo queue RBGs, you cannot count on that. Except if you're duo, if you're doing with a healer, you can maybe count on that. But I think if you're like solo queuing, you're going to fall from a very high place whenever you're playing Warrior. Again, I played Warrior on the PTR without any friends, and I noticed directly that my carry potential really went low. I never really solo won a node in 1v1 because Arms is not really good in 1v1 in general. And in team fights, again, if you don't have the heals at the right time, you're going to flop over because you're very easily switched on. But that's why I'm putting it okay, but also that's why I put it very low on the tier list, like on the solo Q1. If you want to check that out, you can always check that out at the end of the video. Assassination Rogue, I think it's very fun. I think the rework made it very fun. I think having more choices on the spec I think being stealth is in general very fun in BGs. You have also a lot of impact. Again, being able to like solo a node or trying to be very mobile and be very slippery is very needed. Now, is it more fun as subtlety? Personally, I think Assassination Rogue is more fun as subtlety, and that's why I'm going to put on most fun. I think being a bleed playstyle, you can actually go for a team fight oriented Assassination Rogue, or you can be like a solo noder trying to cap different nodes and then go for the other node once you have like the cooldown on the node. You can be very slippery, very annoying. You can be like a poison to the enemy team. No pun intended. Actually, pun intended. Sorry. I think Assassination Rogue is really fun, and you should really try it out if you like loving stealth specs. Especially since the rework, I think you have way more choices, and it feels way better to make a Assassination Rogue spec work. Subtlety Rogue, I'm going to put it in fun. I think it's fun, but you don't really have a lot of choices. You can play a bit team fight, and there is also a lot of specs that you can play around and be more with a bit more consistent damage, I would say, because you have way more active. But I personally prefer Assassination Rogue. Though what is stronger in my eyes is still Subtlety, though, because you have double vanish, you have of course your shields on vanish, you can play with that. You also have a lot of self-sustain. It's the most tanky spec out there for rogues. I think in general Subtlety Rogue is very tanky because of evasion and cloak. There are maps where again I think Subtlety Rogue is not as fun, like for example with the orbs. If nobody's taking orb, you kind of have to take it, and as a sub rogue, if you're taking orb, you lose a lot of your kit, no matter what. I think in general I prefer Assassination Rogue, that's why there is a difference. But I mean, in a vacuum it could be most fun, but I have to compare those two because those two specs are one class basically. And if you have a choice, which one are you going to make? And personally, I would make Assassination Rogue. Even if it's behind on the power curve. I don't know if it's going to be behind on the power curve at the end of the PTR cycle. I think Assassination Rogue is just more my style in general. I'm going to talk about Outlaw. I think it's okay. But it's because I compared Sub Rogue and Assassination Rogue. I personally don't really like the piratey style of the spec anyways. It always has been like that for me. I preferred combat back in the day. Right now it's like with pistol shots and trying to be very like, it's very APM heavy. APM means action per minute, so you have to really know your rotation and know on the fly what you're going to do. I think it's also high skill based, and I'm okay with saying that I'm a noob at Outlaw Rogue because I am at Outlaw Rogue at least. But I don't really find the fun to actually improve on. So I'm going to say that's okay because it's still a stealth class. I'm going to say meh because again, I'm never going to play it. But it's a stealth class, you can really have fun. It's also a lot of mobility. You can have a lot of carry potential on the maps that you're playing. I think it's way better to play Outlaw Rogue on, let's say, Kotmugu. But the problem is you cannot switch specs once you're inside. So you cannot really change your mentality like once the game is started, or at least once you have entered the map. You're stuck with the spec you have. So if you think Outlaw Rogue is way better on the map, that's too bad because you're going to stick Subtlety Rogue. Boomy, I think Boomy is actually very fun in RPGs, but I think Boomy in general in BGs is like the king of BGs. You can have a lot of impact. You can play more of a Starfall build with AoE and dots. You can also play more of a single target blasting build with full moons, and you can basically have those full moons casted pretty reliably because again, not everyone is going to say focus the Boomy, go 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 go, like in team RPGs. No, they're going to say we're going mid, or we're going LM, or we're going BS, for example, we're going GM, but they're not going to say like, look, we need to focus the Boomy. They're not going to do that. So not every single interrupt is going to go for you. Of course, if I'm melee, I'm going on the Boomy or Destruction Warlock because I don't want them to free cast, but not everyone is like this, and you will feel games where you're going to be blasting people. You have carry potential. Cyclone is still till this day the best CC out there in general because it cannot be broken, only with Massy Spell or with a trinket, of course. You can push people off ledges and like cap. You can also just Cyclone cap very reliably as well. You have a lot of CC. I think in general you can have a lot of fun as Boomy. I'm going to main Druid, I think, in 10.2. I think I'm kind of preparing everything to be a main in 10.2 for Druids, because I like the versatility, especially for solo QRPGs. You can play Resto Druid, you can play Boom, you can Feral, so you have a lot of ways to have fun. But also in solo shuffle and also in 2s and 3s, you have way more comps available to you as a class just alone. So I think Boomy is a good choice if you want to main one in solo QRPGs. And I'm not even talking about power-wise, I'm just talking about purely the fun out of Boomies. I think it's very versatile in what you want to do in RPGs. BM Hunter, I think in RPGs it's not as fun. You can have fun as Hunter, but I do feel like you would have way more fun as MM. I mained Hunter in Season 1. In Season 2 I didn't really play it because I felt like nothing changed since the beginning of Dragonflight, really. And now they finally changed the specs. And they finally said, look, BM Hunter, the talent trees doesn't really make sense, especially for PvP. So they're changing that, so that's a good thing. But I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of fun as BM in general. I still think you're a stealth class, you have a lot of like impact on the map. I think having pets and being able to do damage while you are not doing damage pretty much is actually a good thing. You have low CD, so your fight potential is very high compared to other specs which have like minimum 2-minute CDs. So that's also a good thing. You have camouflage, you can basically just be very mobile and you can carry games as a hunter. I would say that's not really as high as other specs. So I kind of value that more. I also think the gameplay is very binary, so it's 1-0 pretty much. It's very hard to actually deal with everything you have in RPGs. I'm thinking about Freezing Trap. You probably will have Diamond Ice Trap, Diamond Ice Trap as a PvP talent to make it work. But overall, you can carry. I want to put it higher, but then again, I think you may have way more fun as MM. So I'm going to put MM as fun because I think you can blast people very, very easily. You have Sniper Shot, which is, again, very hard to stop. You have insane range with that as well. You can play full mastery and not really care too much while in solo shuffle or in 2s or in 3s. Haste is also a good stat because you want to press buttons way faster. But in RPGs, if you are like untouched being full mastery, you're going to blast someone from the face of the planet. So that's fun. Having camouflage, having the possibility to play with pet or without pet. If you're defending a node, generally play with a pet so you can actually send the pet whenever you're CC'd. It's a very good thing. You can actually just be very mobile on the outskirts of the map. You can also go for team fights. You can also CC very well, although I think it's the same level as BM Hunter where your freezing traps are going to be broken. But the good thing is, I think as MM Hunter, you don't really need too much CC. Especially, I think Hunters in general don't need to CC too much in solo RPGs, especially in the team fights, because it's going to be broken anyways. But if you want to find a spec which is ranged, but you don't really have to deal with casting and like interrupts and such, I think Hunter is actually a good choice if you're like looking for a ranged spec that is not really dealing with the same problems as a caster, for example. I want to talk first of all Survival Hunter. I think it's also a very fun spec. Is it proficient though? That's another discussion. I'm not going to say that, but I think the craziness of Harpoon, the craziness of being able to AoE blast with bombs, for example, the potential to actually do a lot of damage, to have mending bandages, to be very like slippery as a hunter. I think Survival Hunter has more to offer than BM Hunter. Now, I think BM Hunter is on the power scale a bit stronger in survival, especially in solo RPGs. I think in social fall it's maybe another discussion, but in solo RPGs, I think BM Hunter will facilitate a lot of the things that are actually struggles for hunters, for example. But as a survival hunter, you have even more struggles with surviving in general, because you're like an easy target. You're either melee or ranged, but the ranged, I would say, aspect of the eagle, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is also a CD, so you cannot really spam it either. I do feel like there is a world where Survival Hunter may be very strong in Soloq RPGs. Carry potential, again, is very high. You have camouflage, you can very much play side in order, and nobody's going to bat an eye because you're a Survival Hunter. You can also go for team fights. You have, I would say, the variety needed to have fun in Soloq RPGs. You don't really need to play one role and one role only. Blood Decay, I think it's mains in RPGs. I think in random RPGs you can have a lot of fun, I guess. But in RPGs, if you're playing Blood Decay, you're going to face another tank 100% versus you. So you don't play Blood Decay among the DPSers. You're playing Blood Decay as a matchup versus a Vengeance Demon Hunter or a Garden Druid or whatnot. And it's actually very annoying if you're landing on a flag map. Again, if that wasn't the case and you played like a DPS, it would be maybe higher. But I think you have to think about everything. Also, matchup-wise, I don't think it's very fun. I think, yes, you can win. Yes, maybe power-wise, you can do something. But I do feel like if you're thinking about fun, it may be very annoying to face, let's say, more meta tanks versus on different maps, like for example Warsong Gulch or Twin Peaks. I think that's an automatic meh for me. But the gameplay itself is very fun. I like Blood Decay. I wish it was more DPS though. I wish it was more like a DPS instead of a tank. But I mean, if I want to do that, I guess I can go on Wrath of the Lich King and have fun on my DK, I guess. Brewmaster, I think it's not fun. I don't really like the gameplay, but you have ways to actually deal like extreme damage with the talents and how it's portrayed. But again, the same for Blood Decay. You're facing more meta specs, Guard Druids and Vengeance Demon Hunter, especially Vengeance Demon Hunter since the rework. Good luck with that. I think it's just not fun. It's going to be frustrating. I guess the gameplay may be a bit okay. Again, you can play like a crazy Tiger Palm build where you're going to literally do 30% of HP with just one Tiger Palm. That's cool. But that's a gimmick, right? So you cannot really do that every single time. And I think it's not really a fun spec, in my opinion. Demonology Warlock, I think it can be fun in RPGs, but I think it's okay because I think it's not the same as an Affliction Warlock or Destruction Warlock. I personally don't really like Demonology Warlock currently, especially. There is no build where you can play like Demon Bolts that is going to one-shot people like in Shadowlands. Right now you're pretty much stuck with Tyrant, and like they buffed the other parts of the kit and they nerfed the Tyrant right now. But does it make it fun? I personally don't know. I think if they made a build possible that you can actually like be transforming yourself as demon and have the power to yourself do damage with demon bolts and shadow bolts or whatever, that would be more okay. But right now, again, you're pretty much like hoping that your pest is not getting rooted, hoping that they don't lose, hoping that they're not bugging. I personally don't want to deal with that, so I prefer to play with Destruction Warlock. But it's a Warlock, so I cannot lower them below okay, because I'm still going to try to play Demonology Warlock. I'm still going to try to have fun with it, and it's because I'm like a sucker for Warlock, so I mean that's biased, right? Evoker, Devastation Evoker. Now I'm going to talk. Since I don't play it, I'm going to talk about experience from other people. In RPGs, they said to me that they like Devastation Evoker. They really like it because you can actually do way more than Soul Shuffle, and you have way more opportunities to turn fights. That's cool. I think also in my Soloq RPGs, I did rate them very high because I do feel like they're very high. And in my opinion, from what they've said, they do like everything that they don't really have about Soul Shuffle. They have it in Soloq RPGs. So I'm going to say that it's fun. Personally, it's like this, because I cannot get over Dragtear, and I'm very sorry. Again, if people like Dragtear and the race, whatever, that's cool. I just don't like the aesthetic of how they cast spells, how they fly, how they move. Everything about Dragtear, I don't really like it. And that's nothing against like the slim body type or whatever, because again, I play Elf, I play Blood Elf, I don't care, but I think the aesthetic, just how they move and how they perform, how they it feels wrong. It feels like you're like doing team morph with Murlocs, for example. Yeah, you can play on Warlock right now, but does it make it like very aesthetic? No, it's not really. It looks fun made, man. I don't really like it. I just don't really like it. But gameplay wise, from what I've heard, I think it's very fun. So I'm gonna put it in fun. Augmentation Evoker, from people's knowledge about it, they said that it's busted, but it's not really that fun as compared to Devastation Evoker, and I kind of believe that. I think it's currently more busted than fun, and yes, you can have fun with busted things, but it is very strong Soloq RPGs, by the way. It's very, very strong. It's also very unkillable currently, I think. For me, it's a DPS spec, but in disguise, they're more of a tank, in my opinion. So I'm going to put it in okay, but yeah, they need to find a solution for them. A Preservation Evoker, from what I've heard, again, is the most fun spec, healing wise, because you have more mobility, you have crazy AoE spells, you have also damage, you have AoE CC, especially the AoE stun. I mean, if you have like a whole line of Hordes or a whole line of Alliance, you're using your deep breath and you can actually just decimate anyone in your path. So you have carry potential. I think from what I've heard from people playing Preservation Evoker, they do like it. But the same for me. I want to like it, but I cannot get over I cannot get over it that I don't like the aesthetic of Draxia. It's just not fun for me. So I cannot play that. Disc Priest. From my experience, I think it's very fun. I think it's, again, having the choice to be able to support your allies, to do a lot of hit damage with your spells. Now you have a crazy ultimate penance build where you're like going to the sky, you're doing a lot of penances. They're buffing it more and more, so it's going to be better and better. The problem is the targeting is meh. I wish they don't make it so you can actually target pets. Sometimes it does target pets. I think they might change it. It's also a 4-minute CD. Yes, you can lower it if you have more talents, but I think it's a gimmick. I'm not going to play Ultimate Penance every single game. I think I'm going to do that if I want to have fun, especially in Solo Shuffle. I think it's more fun there than in our solo QRPGs. But having less buttons, having more damage potential, having more atonement healing potential, having like pain suppression and also barrier, those are fun spells to press. So I think Disc Priest is actually a very fun spec. It can also carry games if you're very good at it. Now in my power status right now, I don't think it's like S tier. I think it's A tier maybe. But that can change with PTR cycles, right? But if you're thinking about like a fun healing spec to play as a DPS, I think Disc Priest is also one of them. That is actually a very versatile spec. Holy Priest, but that's more, that again, Holy Priest, I'm going to say a lot of people actually like Holy Priest. I respect that. I think it's not that fun in RPGs. I can't really, because if I compare Disc Priest to Holy Priest, I will always play Disc Priest. So I feel like if I'm putting it higher, it means that I actually am capable to play it instead of Disc Priest, which is not the case right now, at least. I think the damage potential is also very high, but it's very different though. You cannot really heal through damage as a Holy Priest, if I'm not mistaken. Again, if I'm mistaken, please correct me, but if you're doing damage, you're not going to heal the damage done. That's atonement healing from Disc Priest, but from Holy Priest you don't have that. So it means that you have to choose, and in Soloq RPGs you have 6 DPSers if they all go onto one target, which is not going to happen every single game, again, because they're going to spread out. But if that happens, you cannot really cast a Holy Fire. So there is so fun to be had with Prayer of Mending and such, but I think Atonement Healing is way more satisfying to me, at least. Shadow Priest, very fun. People that are complaining about Solo Shuffle getting targeted every single time, they're going to enjoy their time in Soloq RPGs. Now, build-wise, I think there are a few things that are going to change because they're still going to tune Shadow Priest. I think it might be stronger in the long run, but you have to be careful with how they're going to tune. If they're going to tune it positively or negatively. The issue is in PvE, they're seeming to be strong again, so it's very hard to know if they're going to do anything for PvP. Yeah, I like Shadow Priest. It feels like a affliction warlock, and also you have multiple CC options. You can carry games through your CC. Again, power level wise, I think it's also strong, depending on like again PTR cycles. But playing it in the Soloq RPGs is also a very fun thing. The only thing that you don't have is mobility. So maybe because of the mobility and the things that they don't have compared to the other like specs in the most fun category, I might drop it to fun just because they don't have mobility at all. They have no mobility. And that's something that can be felt if your team is not doing the proper rotations and you have to do it. It becomes very annoying if you have to run away from people and from fights and you keep on getting inside a fight. It's actually very hard to get out of a fight, for example. Okay, let's talk about Elemental Shaman. I think Elemental Shaman is also a very fun spec in RPGs. You can push people off ledges, so that's a W. You have a lot of damage, you have a lot of casted damage, but you also have a lot of instant damage. You are tanky for a caster, in my opinion. You're not very killable. You have self-heals, which is also very important as well. You have utility. Hex is actually a very good spell because it doesn't break directly on damage, it breaks after a while, not like for example Polymorph. And you can do some sweet plays with it. You have also triple school, even quadruple school I think at some points. But I think in general you can have a lot of fun as Elemental Shaman. So personally, most fun. And Enhancement Shaman, I think it's a fun spec. Now is it proficient in RPGs? I have to test way more. I did make a tier list about it, and I think it has carry potential. It has some great off heals, and there is no dampening, so it means that the heals are going to be felt way more. And in general, you're going to have a great time playing Enhancement Shaman. But some games you're going to feel like, I'm way too squishy for this, so you're going to have to stick to team fights. But you can also push. You can Lightning Lasso if you're playing Lightning Lasso as Enhancement Shaman. You can play more of a mastery build where you're going to one shot with like your spells. But you can also play like more of a haste build, and then you're like a good duelist pretty much. So I think it's fun. Feral Druid. Let's talk about Resto Shaman first. I think Resto Shaman is fun. I'm going to say I'm going to say fun because your totems are very very high impact, because they're not going to break totems every single time in Soloq RPGs. If they're smart, they're going to do that, but they're not always smart. And you have ways to do damage that they cannot really stop. They can interrupt a healer, but if they're interrupting a lava burst, they're doing something wrong, right? And your lava burst can actually crit, again, crits all the time if you have flame shock. It can crit for very very high, and trust me, lava burst into a Stormkeeper's lightning bolt and a lava burst and a Stormkeeper's lightning bolt, it decimates someone. If you don't have the heals behind it, that target is dead. So that's why I like it as well. You have a lot of liberty. You can actually solo carry some games because of, like, again, going on solo nodes. You don't really recommend it to be solo as a healer, but Resto Shaman can actually do that. He can actually win fights 1v1 because of the damage that they can do and provide. So if you want to play like an Elemental Shaman in disguise, pretty much, you can play Resto Shaman pretty much and have a lot of fun. Mobility wise, it's not there, but again, Elemental Shaman too, so why do I put in most fun? But I guess I do like the fact that even if you don't have mobility, you have displacement, which is, again, you can have 2 pushes on your bar, so you have like Unleash Shield, and you also have Thunderstorm, so again, you can really destroy a team fight if you're doing it correctly. So I think those two are like deserving the most fun and the fun tier. Feral Druid, I think Feral Druid is fun. They have mobility, they have damage, you have multiple builds, AoE ones and single target ones. I think I'm going to put it in even most fun because I feel like they're the same as Assassination Rogue. They can play more of a team fight build, they can play over like single target build. You can actually have like Cyclones, you have also builds where you don't play Cyclone. You are a very good side noder, in my opinion. Your carrying potential is very high. You have CC, utility. I think it's very fun and versatile because of the multiple builds. I think in general having stealth is a plus for me in general. And I do like the fact that you have some off heals, although I need a regrowth buff, man. It cannot heal for 30k on a 700k HP. It's ridiculous. Like, it's not even 5%. So I feel like they should really consider buffing regrowth for feral druids somehow, some way. I don't care. Maybe put it as a PvP talent so you have like the choice to make to off heal. But I think like relying only on Swiftment is just not enough. But you can have a lot of fun as feral druid, and since there is no dampening, healing will feel a bit more than normally, but again, everyone will feel the same, so the power wise are going to be the same. Like, it's going to be just displaced, not really much. But Fire Mage, I think Fire Mage is fun, or is it most fun? I think it's fun because if you're free casting, you're going to decimate someone. It's actually very fun as well. You're very mobile. You're not very defensive though. So if you're getting caught, you're caught. You're going to die. You only have one ice block, so there's no like cheat depth there. You don't have pets. You don't have consistent damage is higher than previously, but it's still less than other specs. I think 1v1 you can win most matchups, but if you are the one initiating the fight, if you're like initiated on, it's pretty much GG's because of Glass Cannon PvP talent that is pretty much needed if you want to deal a lot of damage with Ignite and Fireball, if I'm not mistaken. And Scorch. No, Ignite is not augmented, right? It's only Scorch and Fireball. But you still need to play that because Fireball, it hits like a truck if you're taking it. And Scorch is not really doing too much, but it's good to have. But you're lowering your HP, and that sometimes will feel very scary. So the one spec that I'm preferring the most out of mages would be Frost Mage. I think Frost Mage is not very versatile, let's be honest, but if you're free casting, you have blizzards, which is very disrupting. In team fights, you're going to be hell to fight. You have double ice block, you have a pet with the elemental, you have ways to play a no stun build pretty much. So I think it's Ice Armor or Frost Armor, I don't even know, in the PvP talents, where it turns your Ice Events into that spell, and it is a 1-minute CD. It makes that you have no haste though, but you get more damage on Frostbolt, but it also makes you unstunnable, and trust me, in 1v1s, if you're not being stunned, it's actually very hard to deal with for a lot of specs. You auto-win a lot of matchups as well. I think it's very fun to play a Frost Mage. Now, is it more fun than Destruction Warlock? I don't think so. But being disrupting the own enemy team with like blizzards, with slows, with ice walls, if you're playing with ice wall as a PvP talent, you can actually have a high impact game as a Frost Mage. Frost Decay, I think in RBGs is actually a very fun spec. You will see a lot of specs being very fun, but because you have multiple roles, if I was talking only about melees, it would be a lot lower. But there is a lot of ranged specs that are actually very fun. I think Frost Decay is also a very fun spec as a melee because you can actually AoE down people. You're very proficient at doing damage. You are stoppable with your CDs, but way less than in Soul Shuffle. Again, if you're stopping a Frost Decay in Soloq Rbgs, it means that you actually know what's happening to you and to your team. If Frost Decay is doing like everything as wished, so that's why you're going to try to disarm. But trust me, in Soloq Rbgs, in team fights, not everyone disarms correctly. Sometimes you're disarming the wrong target, or disarming even a cost because you're like panicked. But Frost Decays, if they're not disarmed, you are going to have a treat, like damage-wise. You can really destroy people. And I think that's fun. I think mobility-wise, it's not really high, but it's a melee, so I guess it's that. You have Chain of Ice, which is very strong. Again, slow, like 70% slow is actually insane. Especially, it's not really dispellable as well, so except with your freedom or with certain spells that removes slows. But I think in general, Frost Decay is actually a very good pick if you want to play a melee and have the disruption ability of, let's say, a Frost Mage. Fury Warrior, I'm going to say it's the same category as Arms. I think you don't really have the BG hero aspect in Soloq Rbgs. I think you're very dependent still You don't really have any immunities compared to other specs. Even Frost Decay, if you're saying that they're very squishy, at least they have AMS that makes them stoppable pretty much, as arranged. Of course, you can stop a Frost Decay if you're like physical or whatever, but often not. The caster is actually very much the annoying part for RPGs for melee. And Fury and Arms, they don't really have any tools to stop like from dying pretty much. If you don't have a healer behind you and they're not noticing you or whatever, you're going to die. So you have to be dependent, and I don't like the dependency that it can provide. But I'm still a warrior main, so that's why it's okay. But personally, I like the aspect of those two classes, specs. Garden Druid, I personally find it meh as well. I don't really, gameplay wise, I don't like it. I think it's meh because you can have like a flag carrying dream, I guess. And as a Garden Druid, you have like the most potential for it. You're very mobile still. You have stealth, so you can be a good node sitter, or you can be a good flag carrier. But personally, I don't like Garden Druid. I prefer Feral Druids whenever they were like feral and you can actually be bear form and do damage. Right now, Feral Druids with bear form, they're just pretty much there to heal themselves. And Garden Druids, they cannot go like cat form and do a lot of damage. In PvE they can, but in PvP they cannot. So I don't like it. So that's why I'm going to put it in meh. Havoc Demon Hunter, I think you're going to have a lot of fun as a Havoc Demon Hunter. They have way more mobility than the average Joe. I think in general I'm going to move my camera because I think I'm going to put more fun specs. I think Havoc Demon Hunter having the mobility, having the damage, having the disruption, having the AoE stuns. You can also jump in the skies. I would not do that versus casters, by the way. You're going to get blasted. But you're going to have a lot of fun playing a Demon Hunter, especially since you rework, you have way more choices to make, and you're going to enjoy those choices you can make. Personally, I'm actually thinking about playing a Demon Hunter in 10.2, but I play so many specs. Again, I made a video about the mains you should, like the specs that you should main for 10.2, and that was more of a personal video for myself, because again, brainstorming like that. But I feel like having Demon Hunter currently, with how they are designed in 10.2, they feel like very fun. And if you are like playing only solo queue RPGs or you're playing solo shuffle, I think in general Demon Hunter is going to be a fantastic choice, and they have way more possibilities than other specs have, for example. But also, you still need heals, but you have darkness, you have blur. CDs are very short as well. You have glimpse, which again, if you're very skilled, you can actually avoid a lot of things. So I recommend having Demon Hunter pretty much. Holy Paladin. I think Holy Paladin is actually fun in RPGs. You have ways to deal a bit of damage, but in RPGs you have a bit less because you're focused with healing your allies, but you have way more utilities. You have double bop, double freedom. You can actually just divine shield as well and run away. I think they are a utility bomb, right? So if you love being utile and you love to be in team fights and being like the hard stop to a death, I think Holy Paladin is one of them that is actually very fun to play. You can also play like two builds, like the Avenging Crusader one. So pretty much you're playing around dealing damage and healing, or you're playing more of a laid back healer. You can play that as well, but you have choices, and I think having choices is actually very fun to have in a game. Mistweaver, I think Mistweaver is personally not fun. Meh, I think not fun is like very, very unique for me, where I just simply don't like the spec. But Mistweaver, I think Fist Weaving, I guess it's a bit higher, I guess, but I think it's way too about casting spells. You can have fun just with healing. I'm going to say it's okay. Meh is really, really harsh for them. I think you have possibilities to play. You also have possibilities to carry. I think 1v1s, if you're Fist Weaving, you can actually still win some 1v1s, but it's very hard still. But I prefer the other heals, so I have to compare them with each other. So I feel like the carry potential is a bit higher for other specs. I think mobility, Mistweaver is probably the best with Evoker and Resto Druid. I don't really like the monk spec and the monk class in general, so I'm very biased on that. So if you like monk class, maybe Mistweaver is more your thing. It's more laid back though. It's more of a classical healer like Holy Priest. So if you want to play more of a classic kind of healer, you can play Mistweaver and have a lot of fun with it. Protection Warrior, I think for me it's the most fun spec out there tank wise, because I do like Protection Warrior, but if you're playing like Warsong Gulch or TP, like Twin Peaks, you're going to have a tough time. If you're playing versus Defenseless Demon Hunter or a Garden Druid, they just have to make it a DPS spec, man. I wish it was a DPS spec so you could actually have a lot of fun as a DPS. Just the playstyle of a Protection Warrior, but you're turned into a DPS, so you're not a tank anymore. So no extra HP. I think that could be very fun, like Glad style, a Glad stance. That was also very fun. But overall, I think it's the most fun tank spec for me, at least. Protection Paladin, I think in RBGs it's meh. I like Protection Paladin, the playstyle, but again, I wish they could turn it into a healer, like a straight-on healer, or a straight-on DPS, I don't know, but just make it like you can play something else than tank as a Protection Paladin. I think then we're going to talk very big about it. But right now, I think you have way more fun with other specs, depending on what you're choosing to do. Resto Druid, I think it's also a very fun spec. I think also a most fun spec. You have ways to like spin nodes. You have ways to play the game with mobility. You have ways to survive that other specs don't have. You have some damage right now if you're playing like a damage build kinda, but it's not recommended. But you can have fun as a Resto Druid because of how Resto Druid plays. But again, I'm very biased. It could be, again, very wrong compared to you guys, what you're saying. But it's about fun, so it's subjective. For me, Resto Druid is a fun thing. I think I'm in my Druid phase where I'm enjoying the hot playstyle. I'm enjoying trying to cat weave or to boomkin weave pretty much with Convoke in RBGs. I think it can be fun. But overall, less damage and disc priest, less healing than an Evoker in my opinion. But I think it's like a good combination of everything you have currently in the game. So again, nothing wrong about that. Retribution Paladin, I think it's a very fun spec to play, but I think I'm going to put it in fun because I do find Frost Decay and Demon Hunter more fun. I think more fun in BGs at least. Because they have less mobility, you can carry games. Divine Shield is very strong. Your damage is very strong. Your off heals is not as strong as Enhancement Shaman, but it's there. You can save allies with your Blessing of Spell Warding or Blessing of Kingdoms, Blessing of Protection, Bob, pretty much. But in general, you're going to have a great time playing Retribution Paladin. I think it's way more like independent than a warrior. So if you're like looking for a plate spec or plate class, I would say Paladin or DK. And you're going to have way more impact, in my opinion. Hodge is also very strong, and not everyone is dispelling in RBGs. That's not happening every single time. So you are like having way more impact with your CC. That's for sure. You can also play Repentance, by the way. So if you're like you're not like focused, which is not happening every single game, but if you're not focused, you can have an easy CC. If you are, they're going to interrupt you, and no big deal, because again, you're eating an interrupt from another player that was casting next to you. So it's also a good win-win situation for yourself. Unholy Decay, I think personally, like if I'm playing like gameplay wise, I think it's okay. It's not really fantastic. I think also the playstyle is not fantastic currently as well. The damage patterns are not fantastic for PGs. I think Frost Decay you will have way more impact as well. I personally prefer Frost Decay right now. Just fun wise. Again, power level wise, I think Unholy Decay is probably stronger in a lot of like aspects. But I do think Frost Decay is actually very strong in RPGs, so you should take an eye for DKs. test it out, and you'll love the class in RPGs. You're way more independent than, let's say, a warrior, and if you have a healer behind you, you're like a killing machine, pun intended again. Vengeance Demon Hunter, I think it's not fun. I guess it's meh. Frankly, Vengeance Demon Hunter, I never play it, so I can't know it. Aesthetically, I'm not really appealed. Again, if I have a choice between Havoc or Vengeance Demon Hunter, I feel like Havoc is just more fun. But I'm going to put it in meh because I don't know. Probably the mobility is making up for all of the aspects that you have with other specs. You're a very good flag carrier. I think it's also very strong. But in general, I think I prefer other specs. So again, sorry for the no explanation because I don't have an explanation. I don't play Vengeance Demon Hunter. Windwalker, I think Windwalker in RPGs is the same as Warrior. They don't have a lot of dependency. They're dependent, I would say, sorry, for elem because you're going to get blown up. You can side note pretty much 1v1s, but you're not going to win every single 1v1. And it's not a power kind of thing. I just don't like the gameplay as well too much. Every time I'm trying Windwalker, I find it like not that fun. I might be wrong again, but I don't like the class, like Monk class. I think there is other like options out there, but I have to kind of see the strong points of a Windwalker, which is mobility. The one-shot ability, I would say, is also a very good thing. Touch of Karma is actually very strong in RPGs because again, in 1v1s, if you get Touch of Karma, it is what it is. It is going to do a lot of damage, or it's going to prevent the death of the Windwalker. So it's a very hard to deal with. Ring of Peace is also very strong, again, on specific maps as well. And in general, you'll have, I would say, the mobility of a warrior, but warrior has more consistent damage right now. I don't know, actually. Windwalker has way more consistent damage these days. But I'm going to put it in okay because I think there are more and better and funner specs out there. So this is pretty much the tier list. I know it's very biased. It's not really a power tier list. It's not like saying, look, you have to main Destruction Warlock because it's the strongest spec out there. In my opinion, it's still a very strong spec. In my Soloq tier list, I did rate them very high. But in my most fun specs tier list for Soloqs, again, I think it's more about like personal taste. Maybe my taste will affect your taste to specific specs. That could also be. If you think you changed your mind because of what I've said, please let me know. If you think I didn't make you change your mind, but you understand my reasoning, let me know also in the comment section below. And hopefully we get 10.2 very quickly because I can't wait. Thank you. Bye.